Welcome to Pivotal People. Today we're going to be speaking to Tony Throp. Tony is the Head of Healthcare for Puma Property Finance. Hi Tony, thank you very much for joining us today at Pivotal People. We're really interested to hear your story. First of all, just tell me a little bit about what you're doing now at work.
Yeah, at the moment we're doing a lot of care home developments. So historically, and I can touch upon, we've covered lots of different subsectors of healthcare. Supported living, SEN schools, children's homes, retirement living. But for the past probably 3 to 4 years, we've really focused on the elderly care home market. And for me, what I like about it is it's an anecdotal thing that kind of pushed me into that focus. But going back a few years, my grandma was in a care home.
Oh, really?
After coming out of hospital for respite care, and actually it was in Yorkshire, in a local authority run home, but actually it was really, for me, just not appropriate. So dingy room, didn't smell great, dark, and actually I thought this is not fair. Ultimately, people towards the end of their lives should be treated like they are rock stars or kings. Obviously there's different price points, but actually this is not on. So I did a bit of digging and realised actually there's some really great fundamentals for supporting this sector, not only as a social impact, but actually just from a risk perspective, because ultimately we're an investor and a lender to the sector. So our investors want us to make sure if we're investing in that sector, they get a suitable return. So for me, what kind of drives my passion in that sector, and over the past few years we've grown from doing a couple of homes a year to now doing between anywhere from 8 to 10 per year, is actually, if you take a step back, 80% of care homes in the UK are over 20 years old or not fit for purpose. So for me, it's like, well, there's a great opportunity there. We just need to work with like-minded operators and developers that really buy into that. So all we do is purpose-built care homes, all en-suite wet rooms, because ultimately we're of the view it could be other people's parents. They all deserve to be in high-quality accommodation, But parking that aside, as much as we can build a nice building, I do appreciate that actually it's all about the care staff. So what we've been doing a lot more recently is really focusing on operators that have a really good culture, good staff retention, because you can have a 10 or 20 million pound care home, but if you don't have the staff, you're not going to be able to fill it or retain those residents. So for me, 95% of my time at the moment is just working with operators, assisting funding those developments, so bottom-up schemes.
What a rewarding job, I'm sure. Yeah, when you see it working and you see it full of happy people.
So my background, very briefly, is I came from a chemical engineering background. So I've always been interested in pretty much magic of, here's a site and you convert it from nothing, that might be worth a couple of £1 million, put some bricks on it and it's worth 20, 30 million pounds. For me, I just find that fascinating, not only on using the materials, how it's constructed. You work with lots of different stakeholders, architects, as well as your client, the developer or operator, the council, and then you fast forward all of that all the way up to, you've built the building, that's great, but actually you now need people to run it. So then working with the clinical commissioners to see how they're doing with getting their general managers appointed and their care assistants. So for me, you get a holistic life cycle from literally seeing a bit of ground, nothing, no value really, to getting a really nice shiny building. So for me, that's what I really enjoy. And then also what I like about healthcare more generally, and it's kind of how I got to the elderly care space, is if I go back to when I started at Shore Capital, there's a very small business. I used to work at some really large companies, RBS, PwC, went to this relatively small company, and with their support, they allowed me to, in effect, go out to explore what sectors would really work for our business. So initially I started off in supported living, so we funded about 25 developments, and that's providing accommodation for people with learning disabilities, physical disabilities. Then that naturally led to me supporting people that build children's homes, then emergency accommodation, then retirement living, then SEN schools, and now more recently elderly care. So for me it was always about, there's a demand there, and is that demand being met, and what's the supply? Is it through the local authorities? Tends not to be in the current environment. So it's either with the private investors or charities, but using that quite simple supply-demand mismatch to identify a sector which really needs investment. So most of our money comes in through the way of debt, and working with equity investors and developers with our debt, we can then build ultimately homes for everyone, whether it's in SEN, or not SEN schools typically, but supported living, retirement living schemes or care homes. So for me, ultimately we're just building homes, but purpose-built accommodation, high quality, long-standing schemes that are going to be there hopefully for the next 50 to 100 years.
Go back to the beginning, as a boy, growing up. Tell me about your life as a young boy.
Yeah, only child, so I'm sure there's some cliches about that. But yeah, really happy childhood, really supportive parents, worked hard at school, didn't know what I wanted to do. When I went to university, one of my cousins had a successful career in the pharmaceutical industry by doing chemical engineering. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought that doesn't sound a terrible degree to take. And taking that degree opened my eyes up to lots of different subsectors: construction, engineering, chemistry, biology, maths, and actually that really instilled being able to be analytical and logical, which really helps when I'm looking at an opportunity now. So looking at, here's an opportunity comes to my desk, do I buy into the business plan? What are the risks? How do we get our money back? Does this work in terms of return for our investors? Does it work for the client? Does this work ultimately for the stakeholders? If we're using a chem, are we building a home in the right location? Are we pricing the home to the right price point? So went to University of Birmingham, great 4-year course. Actually realised when I came out of it, it's quite unrelatable. So I had a summer internship and at an engineering firm and realised I was just designing heat exchangers, which I won't bore you with, quite abstract in the rounds. You don't really see about it read in the newspapers or anything like that.
It's not a care home, is it?
No, so I realised actually what do I want to do. So again, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. One of my best friends, he was in finance, so I thought, okay, well, again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I liked maths, was pretty good at finance, went to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers in the M&A team. So there, it was broadly similar in terms of it's very analytical, quite logical, but the plus for that was I had no background in finance. It gave me a accountancy qualification. Yeah. And from there, I then was able to work in small teams, because for me, I like being independent, like having autonomy, to work with a small group of people and getting a wide variety. So I'd be acting with large corporates, their financial directors, on helping them buy and sell companies. That sounds great. The bad is that happened in 2007, just as Lehman Brothers went bust. So no one was buying or selling companies. So I did a lot of restructurings, where I'd work with companies about to go bust, whether that's working for a bank or working for the borrower. And I really enjoyed that, but then realised actually I still want to do a bit more M&A. So then after 3 years, which is quite common in the accountancy world, moved to RBS, did a similar role, but quite a wide variety of transactions, working with technology companies. One was a shipping company, literally anything and everything. But for me, I like the variety. But after 2 years there, being owned by the taxpayer, there was a misalignment of strategy between that business and being government owned, so they closed that business down. So an opportunity arose to join Puma Investments or Puma Private Equity or Puma Property Finance, all part of the Shore Capital Group brand. And for me, that was quite a big shift, because I was going from a firm of literally tens of thousands of employees to a firm, the Puma business at the time was maybe 5 or 6. But for me, that was a great opportunity to really, I guess, show my independence and show that I kind of know what I'm doing. So, and actually coming from a big bank where you're an advisor can be quite challenging at times, but coming to the other side where you're investing other people's money or the bank's money really gives you a real alignment of interest in terms of working with people that really buy into what they're doing. As well as what I really found interesting was the sectors involved, again, very generalist. So as a business, we would lend and invest to not only healthcare, but residential developments or student accommodation or anything, literally anything, which I liked. But then my, I guess, personal preference is always to become a specialist. So when I started off in supported living, I really wanted to be the best that I could be in that sector. Then moved on to children's homes, a little bit of SEN, a little bit of day nurseries, a little bit of retirement living. And now for me, it's the elderly care. So for me, when a client is coming to me, an operator, and they want to talk to me about doing a care home, I kind of really want to be able to say, actually, you're building this care home, and it's cost X million pounds. That equates to a cost per bed of X. I think that's broadly sensible. Actually, no, have you thought about changing the design? Or from my experience, this is probably better if you do it like this. And I do find that two-way conversation does help and does provide a bit of, I guess, credibility that I'm not just doing schemes for the sake of it. I kind of can add some value.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I really like about it, because the sector, which I think touched upon, was it's really a friendly sector.
Yeah,
Everyone in the sector kind of knows everyone, and provided you're nice back and you kind of buy into the core ethos of ultimately you want to be here to help look after people that in their time of need, then actually people can be really reciprocal and support you.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I really like the healthcare sector.
So can I take you back again to that little boy?
Yep.
And you're going to meet him again. How are you going to advise him about his future if you were to meet him right now?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I've got 3 small children at the moment, so I was thinking, first of all, do they need to go to university, which actually is probably if you went back 10 years ago, it's probably most people say, yeah, definitely go to university. But now where we are in the current climate, I do think unless you've got a particular desire to go to university, you don't necessarily need to do that. Ultimately, try to do something which you're passionate about, because when you're working, you can be quite long hours sometimes, and actually if you're working over 40, 50 year career, if you can do something that you really want to do, then you must, because otherwise if you're not enthusiastic about what you're doing when you're working with other people, it can come across like that.
Definitely.
So I guess the advice would be, look, don't worry too much if you're not sure what you want to do at that early stage. Like, life is short, enjoy it. Work with people that are kind to you and be kind to them. Be supportive, work hard, try to be quite analytical. I always ask questions, which can be quite annoying to some people. It's only because I like learning about other businesses and how one care business might, I don't know, get in referrals versus another care business.
Yeah.
And for me, I'd like absorbing that information. The key point for me would be, if it was telling me when I was little, was probably work hard. That's all you can do, but it is a bit of luck. So coming here today, if I went back to university and said I'm going to be in healthcare, funding care and developments, having studied chemical engineering, I'd be like, that really? Yeah. But actually, it's something I hadn't thought about. So I think
until your grandmother was in a care home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I wouldn't worry too much if you're not sure what you want to do at that early stage. Maybe just get a core skill set of being able to hold conversations, being analytical, being logical, being proactive, being able to deal with people, speak to people, being able to get out of tricky situations. Like, we fund care and developments, and most of the time they go well, but if they don't, how do you actually deal with that challenge? And it's about working with the client to overcome that.
Fantastic. That's really good advice, and your children are very lucky to have that advice behind them.
Oh, they won't say that just yet.
Not yet, no, not yet. Thank you very much for coming. It's been really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.